So SEO versus SEM, right? So click-through rates vary in every industry, but in general, there's about a 70-30 split between paid search and organic search, right? Paid search or SEM or Google AdWords, 96% of Google's revenue, right? The driving force behind what Google is, but the vast majority of clicks are going to organic results, right? So this is why this is a big deal. Now this varies dramatically industry to industry. For example, in the travel industry, it's probably much higher than 30% on the paid search side. But the general rule of thumb is about a 70-30 split, right? So it's worth keeping that in mind as we talk about this.
What is SEM?
Sorry, SEM, search engine marketing, or PPC, pay-per-click, AdWords, all paid growth, all those are the same thing. And these are essentially the ads at the top and to the right rail of Google search results.
What percentage would you work out between, I've had some folks say, we're doing Google, but we should also be doing Bing ads. So, what's the percentage?
Yeah, good question. So I've had some people say, should we only focus on Google? And the answer, we'll talk about it more when we talk about international SEO. It just comes down to the market share they have. So Bing is a consideration only in the US. Google's 2/3 market share in the US and Bing is 1/3. But there's a lot of smart people that have recently said that the numbers aren't adding up and Bing seems to be much less than 1/3. A lot of Microsoft's been very tricky about default search engine setting in Internet Explorer. The demographics and the quality of that traffic could vary as well. So it really depends, right? The majority of the time, Google's the answer. Google is 92 or 3% market share in the UK. It's 1% in China. It's 4% in Korea, right? So it depends on the country, really. But we'll talk a little bit more about optimizing for different search engines a little bit later. Yeah. Yes?
I think the URL structure and the site speed makes sense because it's very quantitative and they look at it. It was mentioned in the video that they also look at design. Is that something that's correct?
The design
Of the site, or is that something that they evaluate? Like how do they quantify that? And the site speed and other factors are quantitative and you can look at the URL structure.
right.
So things like that make a lot of sense, but I just wanted to clarify if that's something.
Right, and how they would quantitatively assess the user experience. Yeah, it's a really good question. So the question is, Matt Cutts just mentioned that design is a consideration. How do you measure that in any quantitative way? So the short answer is, I don't know. The long answer is the ways I would guess they would do it. So there's user behavior metrics, right? Like, are people staying on the site? How many pages of the site are they clicking? Are they bouncing and going back to search results? There's other things as well. There's other things as well, specifically around. There was an algorithm update called the Panda update. We'll talk about in a little bit, but there was Google disincentivized advertisements above the fold. So if they were able to detect the Google Display Network in the space near the top of the source code, they would essentially start to devalue sites because it's a bad user experience to move from Google onto a page that's covered in ads.
Then that would be more relevant for sites like BuzzFeed. I mean, if you're an application, you don't really have to worry about that.
For sure, yeah. And so we don't really know. Like, that's the other interesting part about search engine optimization is the entire industry is made up of people that are guessing at what Google's doing, right? So we don't know. But what I've also found is that a lot of the times Google's messaging is designed to get you to think about the user experience and do those things, and without them outright saying, this factor is worth 0.3 and this factor is worth 0.7, because they can't really tell you outright what they're looking for, but they can directionally say, like, do stuff that's good for the user and, like, kind of drop hints. So parsing their messaging is like an industry in and of itself, actually. Yeah, good question.
It could also, like, maybe depend on what you meant by design, like whether you're talking about the aesthetics of it or the UX kind of thing versus
Right.
like information architecture and like how, like, you know, the layers and the nesting.
Right. That's a really good point. If the design of the URL structure was what he was talking about, that's a great point, right? Like having URLs that are closer to the root domain and having things that are all internally linked really well, that's like good information architecture design. Yeah, that's a good point.